Welcome everybody from far away and close to the Do Nothing Project, our Monday morning project in deliberately choosing not to be productive in the first hour of the day, but productive in a different mode. Um, so we've got both our local folks here. We're in Guelph, Ontario, which is where Sarah and I live right now. And we've got some folks here, and then we have our folks over at home. Hey guys, who are tuning in from all around. So what we'll do is I'll do a little quick intro to this technique that we're going to explore, and then we'll do a 20 to 25 minute sit. And then if we have time after, we always have a little bit of time for kind of questions or comments. So you guys might have something you want to say or report or something. Or if you don't, I have some questions from people that have emailed me in. So I've kind of got that there. So I'll say a little bit about this technique right now. We're going to call this fractal stillness. This is a technique I love. It's one of my favorite ways to think about concentration. That it's sort of about, of course, if you have your go-to practice, as always, you can kind of just do that, and that's super fine. But if you want to explore with me, what I thought we would do is really explore finding an anchor, like in the kind of usual sense, whether it's the sounds or the breath or who knows what. But then kind of deliberately trying to zoom in. If we imagine that the experience of the breath, say, is sort of like fills up 100% of our attention, we kind of zoom into the bottom 20% of the softest, subtlest part of that experience, or if it's sound. And then we let that kind of expand to become the new 100%. And then at a certain point, we'll like try to notice even the subtlest part of that. And the idea is that it's a way to develop concentration, but to let us kind of go ever more subtler into ever more quiet and delicate parts of our experience. So it's just something to explore. I found it's been really helpful for me just to kind of get very still. So we can call it also kind of a way of exploring stillness. So yeah. So let's try it out. And as always, if you have your own practice, your own go-to that's comfortable for you, then of course you can do that. And good to be connected to everybody. Okay. Oh, it's not. I'm not having it on. Oh, sorry. Oh, sweetie, do you need to pass me that bell? I forgot to grab the bell. Sorry. I'm hooked up to this thing. Okay.
Set it so that it doesn't lock it. Doesn't come on. I'm not sure how to do that.
Or you can just set the timer for. Can I see the timer? Yeah. Well, it's okay.
The timer will still go off.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so we just take a few moments to settle in here. Take a few deep breaths at the beginning, if you like. As you breathe in, stretching up the spine, finding some alertness, some kind of an upward motion is the inhale. Some alertness, some awakeness. And then the exhale is the downward motion, so we can make this really gradual. Where the first exhale, you sort of soften your forehead, the worry lines in your forehead and your cheeks and jaw. Soften your shoulders, your hands. And let the belly be soft, open through the front. And right at the beginning here, there's a kind of checking in with our own awareness. Aware of our bodies sitting. Be aware of the surrounding ambient sounds, sensations in the body, feelings, things we brought in with us. And just seeing how the equanimity is. There's a way of kind of opening through the front, welcoming everything. Noticing if you're braced anywhere against any sounds or if there's any rigidity. See if you can gently soften that a little bit. The equanimity piece is really this piece of availability, being available and open, not uptight about distractions, kind of making that commitment. So this is a nice place to stay. Some people like staying in a kind of open awareness practice. But for the purposes of this little exploration, we're going to choose an anchor, an object, something to pay attention to, if that interests you. And there's lots of possibilities. As always, the breath is sort of the classic one. The sensation of the breath, the soft feeling of the breath coming in through the nostrils, or maybe the tautness in the belly as the belly rises a bit on the inhale. But there's other ones too, and you may have kind of a go-to object you like to work with. Maybe the feeling of the hands, or a sense of the whole body sitting, or a point in the belly or the heart. Or it might be sounds, ambient sounds in the space around you, of heaters, of traffic. Or even if your eyes are open, maybe the floor in front of you, or the back of your eyelids if they're closed. So for this first little part of the practice, let's just get settled in with whatever object you've chosen. Just choose something now, and the idea being to see how fully can you feel it. Feel the sensations, or hear, open to sounds. And of course, if the mind wanders, you bring it back. It's sort of like a rep. Bringing it back, building up that muscle of concentration. Okay, good. So we're going to begin our exploration in earnest here. So the idea is to really, with the sensation you're working with, see if you can notice really the softest, subtlest part of the sensation, like the lowest softest 20%. So there's the gross sensation, and then there's sort of the edges of it, the underside of the breath, say, or the softest part of the sound. Or if it's a point in the body, it's like sending the point, your attention in and trying to notice the softest vibratory quality. So what helps here is to get very still and to think of the attention as being very delicate. So this isn't about straining or willing your way in. It's just very delicate noticing of the most subtle part of our experience, and then kind of honoring that, moving into that. Being really curious about how subtle you can notice. Of course, as always, if there are thoughts and feelings, kind of let those, we're welcoming those, but more in the background. We're just not going to deliberately feed those storylines. Like going into the direct experience of breathing or hearing or feeling instead. Just noticing if there's any strain in the face or any bracing, and just seeing if you can kind of gently let go of that. And maybe we can try to repeat that same move. Sort of do this really, really need to be very still. And just trying to notice the absolute subtlest part of that new experience you're in. And of course these things can be very approximate. But the idea being to kind of honor the quietest part of the experience, to see if we can delicately move into that and experience that more fully. And sometimes the breath may start to naturally sort of slow on its own. If it does, that's totally fine. good. So it's a very delicate kind of staying with, we're holding our attention in one place. Very, very patiently staying there as new, even more subtler sensations or dimensions in experience may kind of resolve. This movement into more simplicity, more quiet. And of course, if there's other things going on, just sort of having this easygoing attitude, letting it all be there. Okay, good. So we're going to wrap this up with a little loving kindness practice. That's kind of in the same theme. There's a practice in Buddhism they call mudita, which is about kind of feeling happiness on behalf of somebody else's happiness. Participatory joy, they call it. So you're going to bring it into your mind's eye somebody you know and picture them super happy. So they're smiling and laughing, or maybe you literally have a visual of this, or maybe you just kind of have an intention to have an idea of it in your head. You're picturing this person just really psyched. They're feeling really good. They're laughing. Maybe it's a little kid. It could be an animal. It could be a friend. And the idea here is to stoke the fire of that. So to let yourself feel happiness on their behalf. And then in the spirit of this fractal meditation, zooming into the part of the experience where this feels like the core of the experience in terms of the experience in the body. So for some people it might be a feeling of a kind of smile feeling around the mouth, or a feeling of kind of, it could be a warmth feeling in the chest, or for a lot of us it's just it's much more about presence when we do these loving kindness practices. So there's nothing sentimental in the experience, it's just a feeling of being present, being in presence. So just every once in a while renewing that intention of wanting the best for this person, of connecting to their happiness, and then just zooming in on what that experience is like for you. What's happening in your body when you do this? What very tiny, subtle qualities can you begin to tune into? So much of this path is about honoring subtleties, the significance of these subtle things as they become more and more noticeable in our experience. So it helps to smile, obviously, doing this practice. The concentration part comes from reestablishing the intention, picturing this person, and then feeling what you feel. Maybe you have a little phrase, may you be well. Good, and the more we're able to notice what's going on in our experience, particularly these subtle things, the more they expand and grow in our experience, the more we can find them again. It's the essence of the training. All right. Awesome. So that was that meditation. How'd that go for you guys? Yeah?
Yeah.
Were you able to sort of zoom in?
I focused on the chill on my arms.
Okay.
Tried to focus on when it became warm.
Oh, nice. So you focused on the chill in your arms, and then you kind of focused on the exact part where it started to become warm?
Yeah, because inside, it's warm,
Because inside it's warm.
but it was chilly on the outside.
Oh, how interesting. And were you able to do that?
Well, that was my intent.
Yeah, that was the intention. Oh, what a good idea. How about for you?
Yeah, I liked there was some cue with the delicate, or the word delicate, I think, that really helped, because I have a tendency to try and, I was focused on the belly and I was trying to draw in, and there's that forcing to it.
Yes.
The delicateness is interesting to just, it's like the experience was of listening to the sensation. Like,
Yes, exactly. Let it come to you.
yeah, and then with that softness, it kind of just, if you're just patient, it just opens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just maybe paraphrase that in case, that the delicacy, that cue really helped you, because you have a tendency to kind of force things a little bit with the attention, and So that cue let you kind of back off a little bit, and then the sensation, you just sort of staying there patiently, the sensation sort of begins to show itself in a way. It's like, it's a kind of listening. And then the subtler parts of the sensation can start to kind of open. That's my experience too.
Yeah.
Um,
And then I find when we move to mudita, we move to loving kindness, and then I want to go back to concentration because everything softens a little more, you know? So
Yeah.
I want to go back in.
Oh, totally. Yeah. There's a really great relationship between the loving kindness practice and the concentration practice, because sometimes when you do a loving kindness practice, it creates a softening and opening that you can then go back into the concentration and be that much more open. Yeah. That's a really great thought. I'd never really, you could totally guide a practice where you're kind of going back and forth and just seeing what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. How about for you?
It was, yeah, I liked the instruction. It was a very distracted sit, but so it was interesting to try to focus on something that was very subtle to
Mm-hmm.
anchor me. But then, you know, out of nowhere, I would all of a sudden be concentrated, just like without my trying to. So I would kind of come and go these moments of kind of high concentration and then high distraction.
So like extreme contrast between moments of high distraction and moments of high concentration.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I liked focusing on the subtle part of the breath, which is kind of around my rib cage, and then the subtle part of that, which is like right in the middle of the rib cage, where you can't really feel as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I usually do a question, a kind of like answer a question. People email me in questions. And I have one here, but I also thought I'd put, if you guys had any thoughts or any something you were wondering about, or a comment of some kind, an insight. Don't have to, but okay. Okay, well, so this one was, so a couple people have been emailing me about this question of observing versus controlling the breath. So I thought I'd read out the two questions, and then I had thought a little bit about a response. So first person said that I like focusing on my breath, but find I'm trying to control my breathing instead of just observing it. So what do you suggest? It's a classic kind of thing that happens. And then there's another one kind of similar to it, a little different. That was Susan, and then Bart writes in, I sometimes have the feeling that what I'm doing is controlling my breath with my mental noting. So the noting of actually saying in, out, or counting the breath or whatever, or feel, whatever your note is, that they can sync up. And that what would be a good technique to hack that, to make sure that what I'm doing is not controlling the breath for 10 minutes a day as opposed to meditating. So these are great questions. And I guess I see these questions as really being about, they're kind of about how to work with the mind, because the mind often starts to psych us out in practice. Like there's this ideal we have of, oh, I'm just going to be here paying bare attention to what's happening in my experience. But actually, the act of noticing what's going on in our experience can begin to be changing it. And sometimes the mind really gets involved in that changing process. And it can be this very frustrating experience where people feel like they're continually messing with themselves in the practice. So there's a few different ways to work with this. I mean, and those two reports are slightly different. The first thing to say about the syncing up of the noting, actually that's not really a problem. It's something that happens as a stage actually in particular kinds of insight practice. They often talk about how that syncing up can happen. They call that cause and effect, where you're kind of, as the act of noticing is beginning to change what it is that's happening in the experience. So there's this weird lockstep thing that happens. And it's just a stage. It's like the idea is that you don't get too worked up about it. You just sort of stay with it. And after a while, the syncing up or the controlling part of it seems to fall away. And so I would say to that, if it, with anything, it's only a problem if it's a problem. It's a problem if you're making a problem of it, if it's psyching you out, if it's finding you're distracting you from meditating. So if you're there's nothing about the breath that is the thing you need to be paying attention to. So if you're finding that either the syncing up is causing a problem for you, or you're finding you're controlling it too much, then you can switch to a different object. You can switch to the feeling of the warmth in the hands or the full body sitting, or you can work with the back of the eyes, the Gans felt, the kind of vibratory field there. There's always another object. But since Susan says that she really does like working with the breath, the other option is you can stay with it, but just stay with it, but really focus on this idea that the breath is coming to you, and to help smooth things out, that this much more passive stance, that the breath is just happening. The breath is just happening, noticing is just happening. There's nothing you kind of need to do. Because sometimes there's the controlling part is the thing that's going on. There's a little, like the frontal lobe is a little too activated. So if you can just kind of like keep reminding yourself that the breath is breathing you. You know, it's not you breathing, the breath is breathing you. You're allowing it to come, you're allowing it to kind of move into the experience. Like the noticing is just happening, the breathing is just happening. There's nothing really happening. You know, you kind of have that more passive view, then you can kind of sometimes that controlling part of it can begin to soften and let go, and then you can really have that lovely experience that can happen where really it does feel like you're being breathed, you know, like you're just almost like you're attached to this huge cosmic lung and it's breathing you. You know, that's the experience I have sometimes where I'm not even sure if I'm breathing anymore. It's like I just feel like breath is happening. So that's a bit of a technical issue that can happen, but I think a lot of people can relate to the idea of the mind coming in some way. So these are some tricks to how to work with the mind when it starts to psych you out, and what you can kind of do. Right on. This is totally surreal, but here we go. You know, it's like answering meditation questions over. It's like, so hopefully that was helpful to somebody. And that's the end of our Do Nothing Project Sit. We'll be here next Monday. I'm not quite sure what we're going to do yet. We may have a special guest. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you guys too. And we can hang out and chat a little bit more. But